Well, welcome to Check Up with Dr. Mark. I'm Dr. Mark Vandermeer from Community Recovery, and we're so glad you're with us today because today we talk with recovery coach and a fellow brother in Christ and recovering person, Bill Kolberg. And Bill has a great story for you to hear, and as he shares that story, we are wanting to learn from him, from his experience, and of course, how God is using him in the lives of others in terms of relapse prevention. Last time we talked about recovery coaching and also about education when it came to Jose, as well as to Florence. And now with Bill, we have a chance to follow up with relapse prevention. So Bill, in 3 minutes, tell us how God brought you into recovery and also through your recovery process and now into recovery coaching.
Well, it was quite a journey. I had finally, I went through 6 residential treatments. The 6th one was Mel Trotter Ministries.
Oh yeah.
It was the first faith-based recovery program I was in. But it really didn't hit me until I spent my last 3 days kind of on the street, first time ever. Pretty rough go of it, and I made it into Mel Trotter's, and within 24 hours I was sitting in a hot tub at the YMCA, and that's where it hit me. God has got a different plan for me. So with that, I handed over my will and everything that I knew over to the care of God and over to the care of Mel Trotter Ministries, and started brand new. And with that, I successfully graduated that program, went on to the restoration program, and from that point, I actually started managing the gas station that was within a few blocks of Mel Trotter, in which I was able to see a lot of the fellow people that I was in Mel Trotter with, in the program and not in the program, so I was a familiar face. So I spent a lot of time advocating for them because I stayed in close communication with the advocates at Mel Trotter. So I'd spend probably about an hour a day in my office with someone trying to figure out where they would like to go in life. And that's when it kind of dawned on me. And through Pastor Greg, we talked about the CCAR certification. And after I was certified, I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I applied with Mid-Michigan Recovery Services. Had never been so anxious in my life. The anxiety was killing me during the interview process there. But it was the first place to where I was hired and had to bear it all. So my honesty held true, and I got the job at Mid-Michigan Recovery Services, where I started as a PRC recovery coach and a tech at their residential facility. And now I am a full-time peer recovery coach for Men's Safe Harbor in Lansing. It's a sober living community.
Wonderful. And yeah, and by the way, those who are watching, if you don't know who Pastor Greg is our director of operations here at Community Recovery, as well as one of our pastors and also a relapse prevention specialist. And so given that, Bill, how you got to know Pastor Greg, and of course his relapse prevention group that happens on Friday nights every single week here at Community Recovery. What are the 5, and that's again how you then got even more grounded, of course, with Pastor Greg, and also with where God was then leading you. What are the 5 myths of relapse prevention that you came to learn?
The one thing is I know relapse does not come out of nowhere. So, and I mean, if I were to pick 5 things, I would say that would be the first thing.
Hmm.
I also know relapse as well. Uh, well, you they say you can't prevent relapse, which is also, I believe, a myth.
Mm.
Um, and they also say relapse is a part of recovery, which I think is false as well. You'll hear that a lot. Or I guess, what are we on? 4. So number 4 would say, well, if you relapse, then you're doomed. And I
Mm.
don't believe that either.
Okay.
Or which leads into, like, especially at Mel Trotter, I sat in those seats in front of Pastor Greg 2 times a week for a good 2 years. So a year and a half. Also, after I left the program, I was dedicated to learning everything I could from Pastor Greg's relapse prevention class. And what I come to find out, the biggest myth of all is that treatment did not fail
Mm.
if you relapsed.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that when it comes to relapse, it's not starting over necessarily. It's just part of what happens at times or not.
Right. Well, how I put it with my clients is it's like in recovery, you're building this house and you've laid the foundation and you have your walls up, and all of a
Mm.
sudden the storm comes in,
Ah,
and you have to stop working for a while. Well, when you come back to that house, you don't tear it all down and rip out the foundation. You
no,
start where you left off, and you come you do what you can to complete that house. So I look at relapse prevention and relapse the same way.
I see. So we go through a bit of a up and down in our process, and you're there to help your clients and others who just come to you for that one time to really understand what's going on because they thought they were on the right path, but then the pothole, and then what next? So, what are the 5 truths, true things about relapse prevention, and why are they true?
Oh, the 5 truths. One is relapse doesn't come out of nowhere.
Okay.
Um, and I know that's kind of opposite of the myth, but there's always identifying behaviors, um, emotions,
Okay.
and certain things that develop. I could give one quick example. My
Yeah.
son had he let me watch his dog while he went to boot camp, and a few weeks after he came back and picked him up, everyone noticed there was a change in me, and I was being grumpy, and they didn't know why. I didn't know why. I had to sit and think about it. I'm like, it's that darn dog.
Oh,
So that's when I went out and adopted my own dog from the Humane Society. And I mean, that was it. So I thought about what was making me trend down, and that's where you have to figure out, what you do from there. So another truth um is find find your there's always a pathway for somebody. Uh it could be mental health, it could be uh relapse prevention, it could be very spiritual, it could be a combination of them all. It could be AA, it could be smart recovery, refuge recovery. It could there's just a ton of different ways that you can narrow down to get to your pathway.
mm,
Um, and another thing is, that's the truth about relapse prevention, is that it's a gradual process.
okay.
And another thing about relapse prevention is relapse prevention can actually be harder than just staying sober.
Mm,
So that I found out because there's a lot more to it. You're discovering yourself. You're learning your triggers, and that's another thing. The truth that I feel about relapse prevention is you need to learn how to identify the stages of change and your triggers in order to identify them and stop uh, your thoughts, feelings, or hopefully, you can do that before it hits the action stage of your relapse.
Certainly. So really, relapse is simply then coming to discover what those triggers and cues are about and how what will cause you to stumble. But and as you think about that, and for those who are watching, we hope that this helps because this is all part of the recovery process. It's a marathon or like a triathlon where you're going through different phases, different things, different paths, as Bill put it. It's not a sprint, as we know in track. So, as you encounter someone who's new in recovery, how would you coach them when it comes to relapse prevention?
First of all, I would start with probably their structure. I would remind them by the grace of God that they are there and they are present to be able to be restructured. In my line of work, it's very hard because who I work for is not spiritually based, but I am there to suggest pathways, and spiritual is one of them. So that is a way that I can slide that in. But I start with their structure, and it's all about creating new habits. And with those habits are identifying triggers. Now, like we have our therapists, and we have our caseworkers, we have myself, we have counselors. So with being a peer recovery coach, it's just my idea to create treatment plans with the client on what they're comfortable with. So they're ultimately the ones setting their own goals. I'm just the one who helps sort it out and make sure that they're choosing something they believe can be achievable.
Well, that's great for someone who's new in recovery, and that really is that collaboration between you as the coach and also with the coachee or the client, as we say, which is any of us. Now,
Right.
there are those who are seasoned in recovery, of course, and they may turn to you at some point and say, "Gosh, Bill, I need a refresher. I need some support here. I haven't had in a while." How would you approach that one?
Well, you're basically just reminding them of the tools that they have in their toolbox. So you're just kind of trying to get them to rechannel or channel what maybe they fell out of practice or something. They're not doing any maintenance to their recovery. Some way, somehow they fell off. So it's reminding them of the path that they had to take in order to get to where they are at this point. And if they're starting to decline in their recovery, it's just a good reminder to walk with them in the path that they started out with to get to where they are today. So it's just helping them rechannel, I think. In all honesty, Pastor Mark, I literally use Pastor Greg for that alone. He settles me sometimes when I'm in that state. So it doesn't matter who you are. Relapse does not discriminate. It doesn't matter who you are or how much time you have clean. We are all going to have life problems, and it's always good to have someone to rely on as far as getting rechanneled.
Very, very important. And as we look at too, we're reminded in Romans 8, it says, "Therefore, there's no condemnation for those who are in Jesus Christ." And there's nothing, says in the same chapter, there's nothing, right from the Bible, nothing that can separate us from the love of God. Absolutely nothing. And that's also a big comfort, because when that process is the process and the slog comes and falling off and getting back up again, depending on God, it's so important to remember that. But so what would you say are the best practices in doing relapse prevention? And now, as we looked at the new person, the seasoned person, and now how about just the best practices overall?
Well, the first thing that I like to do is stand up here.
Sure.
Is I like to remind myself of what I'm grateful for. And, for one, I like to throw a huge gratitude. I start a gratitude list, and I'm always thankful to Jesus Christ for saving me. And I believe he's done it multiple times.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for my recovery community. Another thing is identifying what triggers you and being able to recognize those almost immediately. And sometimes we get so caught up in life that it's hard to think about us sometimes being a recovering person. So we have to remind ourselves where we come from and how we got there. And I can't reiterate that enough. So I think gratitude and staying humble, not get complacent or cocky about your recovery. And the biggest one of all is being honest. So you have to be honest with yourself, because if you're not honest with yourself, then you're not really being honest with anyone else. So my motto, and I have it on my wall in my office, is if you do better, you'll just be better.
Yep. And of course, Christ is the foundation. As you and I, we affirm Christ-centered recovery support. And how does having Christ as the foundation help you with your recovery? With the relapse prevention, that is, and also how do the 12 steps, complement or not complement, the relapse prevention process?
Actually, the 12-step process, and the thing is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Well, the power greater than myself is Jesus Christ. And I truly believe that, because I think that in the moment, and it maybe didn't hit me right away because my relationship with God wasn't the greatest when I got into recovery. But I realized one thing: God has always got his hand down, reaching for you to lift you up. But I came to the understanding that God wants you to reach up to help you up the rest of the way. So God does, I believe, want you to do for yourself, as well as him assist you with lifting you up. But in the same breath, it is nice knowing that your safety blanket is having a good relationship with God. It's a comfort knowing that no matter what, that God is not going to give you anything that you can't handle. And even in your darkest hour, in my darkest hour, here I am today, and I feel like the best version of myself that I've ever felt. So I guess, I'm not so profound with so much as words about the the Bible or anything, but what I do know is this: I'm living proof that God's grace has helped me through this time of recovery.
Well, and that's the truth of the gospel. By grace, you're saved by faith. You can't earn it. You can't deserve it. And coming from a Christ-centered point of view, perspective, and biblical worldview, the whole thing is that, recovery is about life. And life, again, begins with the fact that we are spiritually lost to begin with, and we're trying to fill it with other stuff. And so God does raise you up. He does save you. And when you are saved, you're always saved because of what Jesus did for you. And we accept that gift, you got it. That's when the recovery process begins, and all that junk in the trunk is, as we say, is then removed. So what are some final words you want to impart to our audience, those from new in recovery and those maybe seasoned recovery, about relapse prevention and where to go forward?
Well, we all have to start somewhere. And it starts by asking for help. It's the hardest thing any one of us in addiction has to do. But at the point you feel that your life is unmanageable, if you feel that nothing good is coming out of your addiction, your drinking, your drug use, it is time to get some help. And I say this because it's not you that you're only hurting. It's your loved ones, it's your friends, it's your family. Everyone is affected. And what I've grown to love out of what I do is I've seen so many relationships just in the small, short time that I've been doing this. I've seen relationships slowly patch themselves, like mine with my children.
Right.
And I am thankful that that because of recovery, that I do have those relationships. Another thing is, you start it all with honesty. You maintain honesty. Like I said before, if you're honest with yourself, it keeps you honest with everyone else. And I'm going to tell you, it is so much easier to remember the truth than it is the compilement of lies that we were doing in our addiction, and then people calling us out on it. And it's just a huge onslaught of issues and damaging relationships. Another thing is, please tell on yourself. If you are practicing all these things in relapse prevention, and you know your triggers, and you know your thoughts, feelings, and actions, and you're learning how to stop the process of a downward spiral by recognizing it, tell on yourself and realize you're not alone. This is why we build networks of community recovery, people of your fellowship and faith and God, and the AANA community, and all the things that community recovery has to offer. Even even the chapel aspect or church aspect of community recovery, before even you break off into classes, helps get the motor running and helps the light shine. And know you matter. That's the thing. You have to know you matter, and you have to know you matter to yourself. You matter to God. And realize that for me, my higher power was Jesus Christ. And without him, I wouldn't be standing here in this beautiful parking lot and under this tree and talking to you, Pastor Mark, who's honestly been a huge help in all of my endeavors and all of the things that I feel I've achieved. It started out with the foundation of community recovery. I still love to actively do whatever I can to share the message with your community.
Powerful. And as Bill said, as you turn it over to Jesus, watch what he does in you, because then you're turning your will over to him. And as you do that, wow, the transformation that happens over time. And of course, this didn't happen overnight for Bill. But at the same time, what you see today is a more peaceful version that God wants for Bill, what he wants for you, what he wants for all who put their trust in Jesus, because it's not just about drugs and alcohol. It's about life issues. We say that all the time at Community Recovery. And so what Bill was referring to, if you join us here in Grand Rapids, every Friday night, 6 o'clock, dinner first. We feed your belly, and then the chapel time from 6:45 to 7:45 with that, getting the motor prepped. I like that picture. But then we go to our groups. About 8 groups are available today. But if you're out of town and you need to catch us at cryrecovery.online.church. That's our platform where our videos are shown and where we live stream every Friday night with the chapel time, at least. We don't live stream the group, so no worries, but because those are confidential. But with this time together to worship the Lord, go to God first. And just want to remind you all that, yes, with recovery, sharing the screen here, every Friday night, we and can see that, with Fridays, but also Sundays, you can join us there at cryrecovery.online.church. This is from one of my presentations. And of course, we share this also online, and we're also on Facebook. We then live stream on our Facebook page as well as our Facebook group page. So please join us there, and we can then go forward together in faith and in recovery. Well, God bless you today. It's been good to check in with the Lord with Bill.